We mean continue on Zoom sign in. I don't know why are you asking that? You need to go to YouTube. I just want to make sure that we are actually broadcasting on YouTube, and then I'll turn it over to you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Sign in. Fabulous. This must be the book of codes. Okay. I'm in, and I'll make sure we're live. Go. Live on YouTube. Yes, I trust soon. Go live. Seriously, insufficient authentication scopes. That's just special.
The challenge is technology.
Andrea, I'm gonna have you see what you can find out from that, because I think you have access as well. Yes? Yeah. Okay. All right, good to see you too, Sarah. Thank you. All right. I'm going to monitor the live. We are recording. And Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, thanks for everybody for bearing with us as we try to work around the storms in the past and going to Zoom versus being there in person. As a reminder to everybody, if you have anything that beeps or squeaks, if you could put that on mute before we start the session, that would be much appreciated. All righty, so with that, let me go ahead and call to order this session of the Oregon Aviation Board. And Kathy, if you could give us some a roll call, and then we'll do introductions of who we have kind of around the table with y'all.
Yeah, cash needs. We may be able to consolidate some of these accounts to our.
Chair Meeker?
Yes. Here.
Vice Chair Catherine Stevens? Yes. Kenji Sugahara?
Here.
Tom Kruger, Madam Chair, whoops, he is asking to be excused today. If you would excuse him. Martha?
Yes.
So we need you to excuse Tom Kruger.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to go down my list here. Sarah Lucas?
Present.
Steve Nagy? He's not yet here. And Mike Oliver?
He is absent.
He is absent. And will he be excused?
Yeah, if you could give Steve a call, that's probably would be a great idea.
We just need to say on the record that Mike Oliver is excused.
Yes.
Thank you. And that is everybody. So we have a quorum.
All right, fantastic. Well, the first agenda item that we have today is approving the consent agenda, which is simply the meeting minutes from our strategic session in October, as well as the board session in October. Board members, you've had plenty of time to review the minutes of both. Are there any questions concerning the minutes or any updates or corrections that you feel need to be made? Not hearing anything, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stands?
So motion approved.
We have a motion by Kenji. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Sarah. Oh, Sarah, Catherine.
Catherine.
By Catherine. All righty. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as is, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. With that, consent agenda has been approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so going into public comments, we did have 2 letters today to the board. One from Mr. Blake Brown concerning the Independence Airport and the fencing project. And if you would, I think it would be nice if Tony, if we could get maybe an update during your operations session. Just give us 5 minutes real quick and we'll address it then. And then for the reference, Mr. DeHart's letter concerning Fly Salem, I believe we're getting an update on the project later on. So I would like to push any discussion concerning the Fly Salem and their efforts to get air service. We'll push it to then. So with that, Kathy, let me give it over to you for anybody who would like to have public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was nobody who emailed in advance, so I would ask anybody who is on this call today, if you would like to testify under public testimony, either use the raise hand function or turn on your camera and make signals so I can see you. Madam Chair, I have no hand raised and I have nobody signaling that they would like to participate in public comment.
Okay, fantastic then. Well, let us go ahead and drive into Betty's update. And I think we got a discussion about a letter that we'd like to send to LCDC concerning a reference for them to initiate some rulemaking. So Betty, over to you.
Kathy, can you run my slides for me, please?
I can run your slides. Give me a moment if you would. And if you wanted to start, I will bring your presentation up.
Okay. Good morning. This morning, my presentation is going to be very brief. I wanted to give you an update on some federal funding, on the upcoming legislative session, on the status of our director recruitment, and then as a request for you to consider making a request to the Land Conservation Development Commission. So as Kathy's bringing up my screen, about a year ago, Congress passed something called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Within the FAA, they refer to it as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill. It provided additional funding for airports throughout the U.S. that are eligible for federal funding. And we are now starting year 2 of the 5-year program. And 2 days ago, the FAA announced the 2023, if you go to the next one, please, Kathy. The next one, please. The 2023 allocations. So for the most part, they remain the same. So for the air carrier airports, Portland, Medford, and North Bend stayed the same as last year's, but Eugene and Redmond had slight changes. Eugene increased from 3.6 to 3.9 million, and Redmond decreased from 3.9 to 3.6. So for the general aviation airports, there was some changes on the 3 airports that are considered, GA airports are classified by category, either national, regional, local, or basic. So in Oregon, we have 3 airports that are considered national, and that's Bend, Hillsborough, and Aurora. And so they had a fairly significant increase in their allocation for 2023, but the regionals and the locals each saw slight declines in theirs. And then the 10 airports that are considered basic saw a slight increase in their funding. So this is funding in addition to their regular AIP entitlements and what they compete for in discretionary. So BIL funds are available for airport sponsors to apply for and use right now. So that's my update on the federal funding. Then I wanted to talk briefly about, as we're getting ready for the 23 legislative session, we are gearing up for the next session, which in 2023 will be a 5-month-long session. Next week, we'll have legislative days where the committees meet and start outlining what their priorities will be for the 23 session. And then just before Christmas, the bills will be filed in their respective chambers. So that'll be our first look at what the individual legislators are going to propose. And so we'll see those here later this month. Then last time we met, I told you incorrectly that the session starts on February 1st. It actually starts on January 17th. And then just a week prior to that, we will have the inauguration of the new governor and the swearing in of the new legislators on the 9th. So our milestones, our big ones are on February 1st. The governor will transmit her budget to the legislature. And then again, it's a 5-month session so that they have to adjourn no later than June 25th. This year, we were hoping that we would be back to in-person meetings, but due to construction in the building and very limited public space, it's going to be a hybrid where the committee meetings will be in person and votes in chamber will be in person, but there will be very, very limited space within the building for the routine activities that go on when the legislature is in session. Okay, so if there are any questions about the session right now, the only bills that the department has is our budget bill, our capital construction bill, and then a housekeeping bill on taking fees out of statute and putting them into administrative rule. We don't know yet. We should know next week whether or not joint transportation, which is our committee, is going to do a omnibus bill again this year like they did in the 21 session. If you remember, that ended up being a kind of a just a mixed bag of a lot of different provisions. It ended up being like 200 pages of transportation related items. So we don't know, but we should know by the time you meet again in February, we'll be able to give you an update on what the Transportation Committee has in mind.
Before you proceed, Director Kenji Sugahara has a question.
Oh, sure.
Kenji, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Betty, so question for you. Has there been any movement on the policy advisor for the governor in terms of transportation yet? Because I know the transition team is heavily underway right now. Or has there been any contact with the transition team?
No, I talked to our current policy advisor, who's Matt Garrett, a couple of days ago, and the transition team has not reached out to him yet. So his assumption is that his last day will be January 9th, and that sometime prior to that, the governor will announce her policy advisors. She started announcing, she's announced her chief of staff and she's announced the chief operating officer for the state, but those are the only two public announcements I'm aware of. And so, so to answer your question, no, we don't know who our policy advisor is going to be, but we hopefully will know something, you know, within about a month or 6 weeks.
Copy that. Thank you.
Any other questions before Betty goes on? Okay, over to you, Betty.
Okay, then I'm going to move on. Just briefly give you an update on where we're at on the director recruitment. As many of you know, I'm retiring on June 30th. The Department of Administrative Services handles all director searches, all executive level searches for the state. And so this recruitment is being handled by DAS's executive recruiter. It is a national search. We placed ads in the National Association of State Aviation Officials, which is the trade association of the 50 state aviation agencies. We've also posted it in American Association of Airport Executives, which is the trade association for airport managers. We've done outreach with Oregon Airport Managers Association and Oregon Pilots Association, make sure they and their members are aware of the opportunity. And then we've also listed it in the usual recruitment sites like Indeed, and then on the state's website for all state jobs. So the deadline for applying is December 25th. There is no significance to that date. That just happened to be the date that the DAS recruiter picked for a 30-day recruitment. So the next steps will be DAS will screen for minimum qualifications the end of December. In early January, the first review by the selection committee with initial interviews for mid to late January, and those will be held remotely via Zoom or Teams. And then in-person interviews sometime early to mid-February. And then finalists to the governor for her consideration and whether she wants to do in-persons or not sometime in mid-March. Our goal is to have the new director physically on site by June 1st so that we have a transition period, a 30-day overlap. It also happens to be the final month of the legislative session. And for those of you that have participated in or observed the legislative session, you know that last month of session gets a little bit crazy. We want the new director, we don't want to throw him or her into the deep end of the ocean the first day on the job. So we're going to try for that 30-day overlap in there. So that's kind of where we're at on the status for the director of recruitment. Are there any questions on the recruitment?
Yeah, just quick, I would like to kind of put a caveat out there or put a request out there. For the last week of December, where we're screening initial paper applications, it would be nice to have a couple of other board members, or we can take up to 2. If you have an interest, if you could just drop me a note, that would be appreciated, and we'll go from there. How about that?
Sarah had a question.
Sarah had a question?
Yes, Chair Meeker kind of addressed the question I had, was who would be on the selection committee and what involvement the board would have, because I do think that 2 members would be ideal.
Yeah, and probably what will happen is what happened last time, and we talked with Matt Garrett. It'll depend on the policy advisor if we get any injects from the new folks. But generally, last time it was a little bit large for the selection. The paper screening went fine, but then we got into the in-person interviews. We'll try to narrow it down to like top 3 or 4 candidates. And at that point, we had a senator come in and brought in, I don't know, 5 or 6 different key stakeholders from business aviation out there. It was quite to do. I think we'll probably skinny that down to 1 interview panel versus 2. But right now, I that's just my how I think things will go. But I'd anticipate myself and up to 2 other board members, and then we'd like some stakeholders, a couple of stakeholders, and then we'll probably have the transportation director, and then if he brings along anybody or she, that would be enough to have a pretty good, healthy panel to interview the final folks.
Chair Meeker, Catherine has a question.
Go ahead.
Meeker, a great job getting that application process going. Sounds like we'll be on track for being able to get someone in place, hopefully. I did have a question about the minimum qualifications and specifically the education requirement, because it seemed very specific to someone who has a degree in aviation management. I run an airport. I have a degree in technical journalism and a master's in applied information management. I technically wouldn't qualify to be able to apply for this position. So I'm just curious about how much flexibility is going to be given to that education standard.
So to the minimum qualifications, you have to have a 4-year degree. Then preferred qualifications are, we'd like you to have your degree to be in aviation, some aviation related field, but that's just a preferred, it's not a requirement. So the minimum requirement is set fairly low. You've got to have a 4-year degree. Okay. And then we said we'd like to get to be a preferred attribute is either accredited or or a pilot. So those are preferred attributes and not minimum qualifications.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Sure.
And Catherine, just overall, I talked with Matt Garrett specifically and pointed out that while we definitely would like to have aviation with background, we got it. By far and away, the #1 quality going into this director search with the ability to be a leader, to have a vision, and to collaborate and to bring to be able to work a project and bring it to bear. That's by far and away the #1 requirement going into this director search.
Very good, thank you.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to what Catherine said about that. The way the job description does read, it says the minimum qualification is an aviation or transportation bachelor's degree. And my concern is that might detour some qualified candidates from applying because they believe that they would not meet that minimum requirement. So it sounds like it's a preferred requirement, but the actual posting says it is a minimum requirement. So
we need to get that corrected. And if it's in the actual minimum, we need to get that pulled and rewritten, Betty.
Okay, I'll check it. Okay, I'll check it.
Is that your last slide?
Okay, if there's no more questions about the recruitment process, I'm going to move on to the action item, which is a request for the board to consider sending a letter to the the Land Conservation Development Commission. So can we go to the next one, please, Kathy? Okay, so for our newer board members, and as a refresher for our older board members, we have been in litigation for about 3 years now, related to the Aurora Airport Master Plan. I'm going to give you just a brief summary of the major steps that have got us to this point. I would remind the board members that we are in active litigation. And so I'm limited in what I can discuss. We're going to have an executive session following this meeting where we're going to go into more detail about the current litigation. But for this item, I'm just going to stick to the request for some administrative repairs that are not part of the legal action that's going on. So 3 years ago, we were drawn into litigation when related to the board and the agency's actions related to the Aurora Airport Master Plan. The petitioners alleged 15 what's called an assignment of error before the Land Use Board of Appeals about a year, and that was in November of 2019. Almost a year later, LUBA ruled on the proceeding and found in favor of the state, the agency, and the board. The LUBA decision was then appealed to Court of Appeals, and in June of 21, Court of Appeals reversed and remanded the LUBA decision. Again, on those 15 points of assignments of error, we did not dispute the Court of Appeals rulings on most of them, but we took exception to 3 items that were related to use of exclusive farm use land, the urban growth boundary, and the court's attempt to define what the term permitting use by a larger class of aircraft meant. So we disagreed with that, and we asked the board, and with board's approval, we sought a Supreme Court review of those items. And that was in September of 21. In December of 21, just about a year ago, Supreme Court declined to hear the case. So that left us with only 2 remaining avenues for repair on this, and that was either administrative or legislative remedies. So while we were pursuing the judicial route, we were also pursuing an administrative remedy via the Department of Land Conservation and Development. We asked them to do rulemaking to address the issues that were raised in the Court of Appeals ruling related to the land use. And at the time, in October of last year, the director of DLCD, Jim Rue, agreed to initiate rulemaking in early 23. He subsequently retired in April of 22, earlier this year. And the new director, Director Bateman, and I met in August and then again in October. And in October, Director Bateman informed us that DLCD would not be initiating rulemaking on this. And so the next steps for us, again, our preferred method of addressing these issues is administratively. We think this is appropriate for DLCD to clarify via rulemaking on these topics. But if DLCD does not want to do so, we would ask the board to ask their commission to direct them to do so. If that is unsuccessful, the next step would be to ask the legislature to ask DLCD, or not ask, to direct DLCD to do rulemaking on the topic. The only other option beyond that would be to ask the legislature to directly define via statutory language these issues, which I don't think that they will be willing to do, because they will correctly say this is DLCD's job and that DLC should do it. So the request before you today is for the State Aviation Board to ask the Commission for Land Use Conservation and Development Commission to initiate rulemaking on this topic. So the copy of the letter, draft letter, is in your packets. I'm hoping you've had a chance to look at that, and I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, and then for the board members out there, the reason this is important is right now, there is legislation that allows for development on EFU land with, as long as you meet some exceptions. And there's a list of long exceptions, and one of those is to allow aviation, and it states as long as it doesn't, open up the airport to a larger class of aircraft. So we have historically for many years referenced that exception to the land use to be a larger aircraft, meaning size. The Supreme Court ruling said, no, we say that it's not size, it's to actually, it increases the number of aircraft that fall underneath that particular larger class. So this is actually a change of definition that affects all airports in Oregon, which is why we feel so strongly about it. This is separate from Aurora. This is now affecting development at all our airports. So this is why we consider it important. That's why we asked to go to the Supreme Court. It was the understanding, that the Supreme Court wouldn't take it because it could be handled at lower levels. Unfortunately, now that lower level is closing off to us. So we are going, my personal recommendation is I am in favor, if you want to go ahead and address the wordage in the letter to LCDC, that's great. But I do believe we need to continue to push, as this is an important item for aviation development in Oregon writ large. With that, let me back off and see if we've got some comments or questions by other board members. Catherine.
Chair Meeker, I will just ditto what you just said. It's really much more broad than just an Aurora airport issue. It really is going to be something that sets the standard for airports across our state. So I think it's very important that we continue to pursue this through the correct avenue, which is for this agency to do the rulemaking process. I support sending the letter.
Okay. Sarah, do you have any comments?
No, Chair Meeker, I agree with what you and Catherine have both stated.
Kenji?
Thanks, Chair Meeker. The question I had was a little bit ancillary, but first off, I want to say that I definitely support this, the letter. But what was the rationale given by Director Bateman for declining initiating that rulemaking, and whether there is any potential avenue for reconsideration on that decision?
What she stated to me was it was workload related, and also, and I quote, it was too controversial. And as we state in the letter, we understand that anything related to Aurora is controversial, but this, as Catherine had said, this has statewide implications, not just for that particular airport. And so they said primarily it was workload related, and we understand. We're a tiny agency of 15 people. We really understand workload limitation, but this is not our jurisdiction, our area of expertise. It is DLCD's, and we think it is appropriate that they take this on.
And Stacey, you are really smart legal folk. What do we got?
So actually, I just want to throw out there, I want to be careful not to advise you guys since we're in open meeting right now, but I'm not sure if all of you are aware of this, but part of the workload issue, not part, probably the workload issue for DLCD is that in the last year, they passed major or adopted major overhauls to what's called the transportation planning rule, which is where this rule that you guys are taking issue with, that's its home. So you might see it in the news. Basically, well, I don't want to go through all of the details. I just need to tell you that the planning rule that they changed affects almost every single planning organization in the state. And there are many counties and cities, Marion County included, that have actually challenged that rulemaking. So DLCD, LCDC are about to go to court over all of this. So I think it's possible. I think the timing of this is much better, but I think, Betty, when you originally talked to the director at that time, this was in the works. So my guess is that their plate was incredibly full with this particular rule. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what they have going on and another reason why they may have denied it. So, and I can tell anybody about that transportation planning rule, but it's, it is substantial. It completely changes the way most cities will do their planning.
Okay, Stacy, I kind of make it my mission here as the board member chair to really kind of understand the land use laws. Who would I go to kind of get a better briefing on what? I didn't realize we had a change. I need to get a little bit smarter on this.
Sure, it doesn't affect aviation. It's all about planning within cities, and it does things like eliminates park. It mostly affects cities that are metro that have a much higher population. So like Portland, Bend, I think Medford might fall into it. It does, the primary goal of it was to reduce reliance on the automobile. And so that's mostly what it was all about. So reducing parking in cities. ODOT is restricted to expanding lanes. It just doesn't affect you guys, but it is a storm, to say the least.
Okay, so it's basically LCDC is just really, really busy right now.
Yes.
Okay. Still, though, we do feel that this is, they need to get us on the agenda. If not this year, next year, we need to see some kind of relief, and we got to get a better, thorough understanding, or we need to press forward with getting a change to the ORS, because we can spell it out in the ORS as well. So if we just need to decide, and the attention on the letter is, if we get a no from LCDC, then the next step is we're going to start crafting language, and we'll see how we can go into the legislature fix from there. Steve, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, you just answered my question kind of, because from the legal counsel's, kind of background on that, which I'm aware of their bottleneck there, and again, not affecting aviation. But my question is going to be, if in fact they say fine, but we're going to be putting you at the back of the line, and it's 2 or more years before we see something like this, I was just wondering what our next step would be, but you just answered it right there. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have comment on sending a letter to LCDC? If not, do we see? So I'm kind of saying, do we need a vote on this? I think. Let me go here and get back to my minutes. Yes, we do need a motion. So if let me go ahead, and if I could get a first motion to approve that for me to sign a letter to request LCDC to initiate rulemaking, I would appreciate that motion.
Chair Maker, I make a motion to approve the letter from the State Aviation Board to the Land Conservation and Development Commission requesting they initiate rulemaking related to the Court of Appeals ruling on the Aurora State Airport.
Do I have a second motion?
I'll second that.
Zach, Steve?
Yes.
Steve, okay. So all those in favor of approving the chair, which is me, signing a letter to request LCDC to initiate rulemaking, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing that, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the Salem Airport, which for those members who weren't here back in the day, we approved a substantial grant to get to join with Salem Airport as they try to get commercial service at Salem, which it is desperately needed. I can't understand why we have a state capital without, commercial service, but I will go ahead and turn it over to John Pascal, and he can kind of tell us a little bit about how things are going.
Thank you, Chair Meeker and members of the board and my friends and colleagues over at Department of Aviation. I can just see you past the tower there. I was looking forward to having some company this morning, but I understand that travel was a little bit treacherous this morning, so I'm glad to be able to attend virtually. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank ODA and the board for their continued support of airports in the state. The issue you just discussed is a perfect example. It does affect airports statewide, but also through the CORE and formerly the ROAR program, which have benefited the Salem Airport significantly, both in terms of on-airport projects and recruitment of commercial air service, which we'll talk about shortly. There's actually a lot of activity happening right now at the Salem Airport, some significant development proposals, working with the FAA on siting a new air traffic control tower as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Master plan update, which we'll touch on shortly, commercial air service recruitment efforts, which we'll talk about as well. So if I may, I'll share my screen, because if you're anything like me, you'd prefer to look at a picture of an airport than listen to me talk. So let's see here if I can screen share my Google Earth. All right, you see a picture of the Salem Airport there?
Hey, John.
All right, great. I'll start with the master plan update first, and then we'll get into commercial air service. I understand Mr. DeHart's here, and he may have some comment as well. So I'll save that for a second. First, we'll talk about the master plan update at the Salem Airport. A little bit of background. Back in November of 2019, just before COVID shut everything down, we had our last in-person joint planning conference with the FAA up at the Seattle Airports District Office. And at that time, we had a very robust discussion with them about the future of runways around 16. They had some questions about taxiway realignment, to meet modern design standards. What was our plan to realign those taxiways, which are included in the existing master plan? Because it's no longer an AIP eligible runway, the last master plan identified our primary runway as having sufficient wind coverage so that the secondary runway is no longer AIP eligible, which means the Salem Airport we can keep it if we want to pay for it ourselves. And so it's likely to be cost prohibitive in the long term for us to maintain that runway. But they wanted to understand kind of what our plan was for that. Excuse me. And the other discussion that we had at that time was the amount of developable property we have at the Salem Airport. You can do that well landlocked. There's no side the fence property to acquire. So any future development, both aviation and non-aviation development, will have to be inside that airport. At one point, to have some of our property at least for non-aviation development, but they were concerned that there wasn't enough property left inside the fence to meet our grant assurances for future aviation development. Because inside the taxiway area, we have about 80 acres of property, acres at the north end, so 100 acres of potentially developable property. So there was this long discussion about the future of that runway, and that prompted FAA to ask us to move up our plan to do a master plan update from probably 2025 or 2026 up to 2022 or 23, and they moved the grant funding forward for us and provided that in 2022, along with a core grant match of just over $40,000. I thank you for that. Those of you that run airports like ours that run on a very, very tight shoestring budget, all of that core match money really makes a big difference in not impacting budget. So the master plan update is underway. It kicked off in October. The stakeholder kickoff meeting, including the Planning Advisory Committee, will be on December 14th. Heather Peck from Department of Aviation will be included in that group, as will Mr. DeHart. He's a business owner here on the airport as well, and of course, representing the Fly Salem Committee. We expect the master plan to be updated in the spring of 2024. And while, of course, we can't predetermine the outcome of the master plan, we will be talking about the future of that secondary runway and the future of our commercial areas. As I zoom in here, you can see the ramp, limited parking that we have out that we have available for commercial. case, I think we put a future terminal.
Hey, John, can I ask,
With your,
Kathy, is that on John's end, or are you hearing the static and disruption as well on his briefing?
we're hearing it from John's end. The broadcast from here, I believe it sounds clear. Tell me if I'm wrong, John. I think it's going to be your connectivity.
Okay. Am I understanding you're having difficulty hearing me?
I'm going in and out a little bit. Right now, you are clear.
Okay, I apologize for that. Is there anything that I don't know what was missed? I apologize if there's. Maybe I'll see if I can do a better job of just speaking up a little bit. So that was just a master plan update. As far as commercial service, we spent the better part of 2022 working on commercial service. There are currently still 2 low-cost carriers that have expressed continued interest in beginning service to Salem in 2023, as early as spring of 2023, which is just right around the corner. So the city is continuing its work with its aviation consultants, TSA facilities and regulatory staff, architects, engineers, et cetera, looking at the existing terminal, its ability to handle larger aircraft, 737s, Airbuses, those size aircraft. Our terminal is sized really for regional jet size aircraft. So we need to understand what that means with the upsized TSA screening checkpoints we have today, our limited seating areas. The city is also looking at its funding opportunities, both internally and externally, to accommodate whatever terminal and potentially parking upgrades will be needed. So we're looking at infrastructure loan and economic development loans, grants, bonds, TOT funds, potentially urban renewal area funds, or some combination of that to accommodate whatever is identified as immediate needs to bring air service to Salem. Excuse me. We plan on taking a capital and operational funding staff report to City Council on January 9th to seek their approval to move forward and for them to provide the funding for us to move towards commercial service in the spring. You may be aware that the state of Oregon provided a $540,000 grant earlier in 2022 to the city of Salem to provide funding for ground service equipment, which we do not have here at Salem. So the procurement of that equipment is already underway. We should have all of that on site early 2023. And of course, the federalization of the airport requires a complete rewrite of our airport security plan. The previous airport security plan was a partial program because we had aircraft that were less than 60 seats. Of course, now we're going to have aircraft with greater than 60 seats. So we need to have a complete airport security program. So we've begun the development of that program as well. My colleagues at Eugene and Medford, thank you, Catherine, to you and your staff for providing information and support along the way. I may lean on you a little bit further as we go through this. But that's a brief of the efforts that are underway. We're shooting for a target date of May of 2023 to have all this wrapped up so that we can bring air service to Salem in early 2023. That is the target. That's the goal. That's the date that we're shooting for. And we're pulling all the stops out that we can to try and meet that date if possible. So with that, I'll leave it there and happy to take any questions, or if you want to do the public comment next, however you want to proceed, Chair. Thank you.
All right, Kenji, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I always have my hand up. Thank you, Chair Meeker. So great presentation. As my local airport, I'm excited to see some of the ideas and concepts going forward. I did have a question in terms of the master plan. Are you also looking at other, will you be considering sort of new forms of aviation as well? So we're talking about advanced air mobility, urban air mobility, and whether that's going to be integrated somehow into the master plan. I know it's going to be a little bit farther out in terms of the timeline, but just consideration, especially around the development. And also, for example, infrastructure related to alternative fuel and new types of fuel that are coming online as well, including perhaps hydrogen and also electrification as well.
Those are great questions. Yes. And in fact, we just recently had a very robust meeting about urban air mobility, electric aircraft charging stations. We've actually been working already with a company out of Vermont called Beta Technologies. We've got approval to install electric charging stations here at the Salem Airport. We've identified a location on our ramp, at least for short-term aircraft electric charging stations. And then in our master plan, we want to look at other locations for urban air mobility, electric aircraft charging stations and so forth, to see if there's a better location for those, and if there's infrastructure needs for similar to like a terminal where you need parking, passenger lounges, pick up and drop off points and those sorts of things. So we will be looking at that for sure. In terms of alternative fuels, it's Brent DeHart is here. Is actually the owner of Salem Aviation Fueling. He is the sole fuel provider at the airport. He and I have not talked at length about alternative fuels. He may have some comments on that, but certainly the larger discussion about the future of aircraft and alternative fuels and electrification is ongoing, including at the Salem Airport.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions out there for John?
Catherine?
Catherine,
Yeah,
go ahead.
sure. Yeah, thank you. John, I know there was some worry that your current terminal building would not be large enough, and that even the TSA was saying this is not going to be workable for them. Is there any movement on any changes that need to take place?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're working through now. So there's a couple of different approaches of looking at it. There's the sort of terminal design industry standards approach, which we've already looked at. And in looking at it through that lens, the terminal really isn't sized for essentially 3 times the passenger load that we've had previously. A different lens to look at it through is strict code occupancy issues. Do we have enough restroom facilities and square footage to accommodate X number of people? And there is, and so we're looking at that as an option, sort of an immediate option, but of course that provides a suboptimal passenger experience. So there's a couple of different, there's a little bit of a push and a pull there on which way the city wants to go, how much money it wants to invest in its infrastructure into the terminal primarily, but also the parking facilities, without knowing if air service is going to be sustainable here. We hope that it will be, we think that it will be, but of course there's a big investment for the city, an at-risk investment in a terminal facility for the long term. So that's sort of some of what we're trying to work through now with architects and engineers and terminal planners.
All right. Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck, and we'll continue to avidly follow that because we are big supporters.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair Meeker. It's a heavy lift. Those of you that have ever gone from a GA airport posture to a commercial service airport posture, it's a lot of work, but we've got some great partnerships, including the Fly Salem Committee. I think you wanted to allow Mr. DeHart to provide his comments during this period, so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Chair. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. So Fly Salem, Mr. DeHart, you got anything you would like to add on to?
Thank you, appreciate it. I was just listening in. I think John hit the highlights and my comments were included in my written submission. So unless there's a question, I think I'm good.
Okay, thanks, Brent, and keep pushing. We are rooting for you. So,
thank you.
All right. So with that, I think now it's over to our own planning and programming with Heather.
Heather, you're muted.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can, and we can hear you.
Okay, perfect, yay. All right, let me start at the beginning. All right, I'll keep it pretty brief, but I did want to go over one great addition. You'll notice in the conference room with Catherine and Betty, we have a new hire. His first day is today. And his name is Alex Thomas, and he will be the new core grant coordinator working side by side with Andrea. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Welcome aboard, Alex.
And then our group will finally be at full staff. That said, I just wanted to go over a couple of little things about what we do, since we only get to see you all every other month. And I'll share this with you after the meeting, but it's a little bit about planning, programs, and administration, since there's two divisions here and we work together. What I oversee are both planning and programs and the administration side. And the staff for that, I just wanted to lay out a little bit of what we do in each of those areas. So system planning and also master plans, like John had mentioned, I'll be a part of that master plan project team, as well as other master plans that go on statewide that are not our own airports. I sit on them representing the system plan. We do FAA grant administration, pavement evaluation programs for the 67, paved airports. I wrote 66, but a 67th airport was paved during a Connect Oregon project about 6 years back. We do all of the statewide master planning for ours, and then, like I said, sit on others. Land use comments and reviews for land development in and around all airports. We are submitted reviews from all jurisdictions that have airports around them within 5 miles. And then tall structure reviews. And that's what Brandon spends a great deal of his time doing and processing the payments now that we can collect payments for those. We also do special planning projects, and we work with all of the planning directors and managers with all of the local jurisdictions. In the programs group, mainly in the programs area, I manage the pavement maintenance program, which you do hear a lot about from me. I am the designated agency contracting officer, which means I work with all of the other state agencies on all contracting issues, and I review all of our contracts and templates with DAS to make sure that we're in compliance. DBE, our federal programming, and the triennial goal setting that we do for all of our 12 NIPIAS airports, and the MWESB and small business coordination that we do on the statewide contracting front. That all comes out of this group as well. And then the ODAV aviation system action programs, which used to include ROAR, but now it's just CORE and SOAR. And we manage and administer all of the CORE grant funds, and then also track the SOAR spending. As came up a few board meetings past, we've gone ahead and put it into the software for the upcoming cycles so we can pull audit reports and trails out of that. We also do the FAA AIP and now BIL grant management processing and work with the FAA. Kristen does do all of the draws for those still, but we are training some backup for that, and the UAS coordination. And that's also a pretty big one, but we lean already on Kenji for some assistance there. I do work with Business Oregon on some special projects with industry related and business additions, as well as the test ranges. And then on the administration side, that's all the agency accounting, accounts payable, aircraft registration programs, coordination with ODOT Central Services, who we do pay for all of our central service and accounting management from a tracking perspective. Inventory management and data collection, which Lisa does, and the reporting for that to comply with all state requirements. Office supply management and ordering, records management and retention, which Lisa is also responsible for. And then the procurement coordination, which we are just launching a brand new statewide new procurement system. And I'll go over that a little bit in a slide further on. The board management, Kathy has graciously decided to stay on for the next few months through July. So we're so happy that she wants to be a temp for our agency. It's awesome. Website management updates, social media updating, We do have a person that does some of that along with Tony. And then we do rules updates, OER, and then tracking and coordination for all of our e-devices, cellular services, and our computers. So that's just a little bit of it in a nutshell. Going over the statewide aviation coordination for program management and tall structures. So far, we've done about 400 tall structure reviews. And I'm happy to report that since we talked, and I think we only had one in the pipeline, we've done 25 tall structure reviews and determinations under our new law that requires us to charge $100 per review. So we've collected $2,500 to date. We've done over 200 land use reviews with local jurisdictions all around the state and had dozens of meetings with local jurisdictions for land use requirements related to airspace and housing next to airports, and you name it, there is a lot. ODO is also working on a couple of projects that require some of our expertise in siting, and those will be coming online over the next year or so, but they're completing like phase 3 of some sites that will be finally built out. As I mentioned, procurement, Oregon Buys is live. Oregon Buys is the new state e-procurement system, and it will replace Orphan completely if any of you are familiar with that. Our procurement team is myself, Kristen, Andrea, and Holly. And this new system doesn't just allow us to put out our RFPs and contracts and proposals, but it's a full procure to pay e-procurement solution. So it's everything and then some. In this system, it's like, it's going to be similar to an Amazon, if you will, for the state. It's going to have all of our requirements in there and all of our ordering pieces and everything that we would have to go in there and procure certain ways. And it will allow agencies to track everything, and it will be more transparent from the outside looking in. And so it's really exciting. It's a heavy lift. We're a small agency, 16, 17 FTEs. So this is a big lift for us. We haven't fully instituted it yet. We're getting ready to, and I think our full schedule to be complete is in April. But we are working with central services with DAS and ODOT on the procurement for RFP side right now. And like I said, I'll give you guys all of these so that you can click on and learn more about all of this. PMP update for region 2 and 3, 21 and 22. Region 2 is complete. I gave you guys a little bit of an update in the last meeting, and I'm doing final inspections, boots on the ground this month. And then program work is being finalized for spring and summer for bid right after the first of the year sometime, so that we can get that out there. And then I'm working with our pavement evaluation program consultant to define the upcoming work for 2024 and inspections for that region 1, because it's region 4, sorry, since we have now 4 regions. Capital projects update. Let's Bay Runway rehabilitation project is ongoing and on schedule. 90% plans are expected within the next 2 weeks, and we'll be reviewing those for early bidding. Lebanon EA completion is ongoing with design on track for early 2023. Cape Blanco rehab and electrical project design is ongoing as well, and we expect 90% plans in our hands too within the next 2 weeks, and doing final comments for those for early bid 2023. And that is a very quick project. We plan on having that fully constructed by the end of June. So that one is a fully state-funded project. It's not NIPIAS. So it allows us to work a little quicker than having to go with the FAA grants. I will give the board an update when we get the plans in hand and look at getting our bids out. master planning projects for internal for ours. As you know, the Aurora State Airport is undergoing a master plan, and the first PAC meeting took place a little over a year ago. And it's hard to believe that we're still not in working paper 2 yet. So I wish Salem all the best of luck. We've met a bunch of times, and we are behind our anticipated schedule by approximately 7 to 8 months, but we know that, and it is due to that was an aggressive schedule, and we added more meetings, we added more public review time, and we also added more time to explain to the public and the PAC what's happening, when it's happening, when things are submitted to the FAA, and where the process is at, which we just did complete a PAC meeting, which was a review of the process and where the process is right now. And we are still awaiting FAA approval of our forecast. And they still have it in their hands, and we've sent back some comments. And I think we anticipate maybe receiving forecast approval sometime within the next couple of months, I would say, if I had to guesstimate. And then when we do receive the forecast approval, that working paper number 1 and chapter work will be closed and done, and allow us to move forward with working paper number 2 and chapter 4 and all of the facility requirements based upon the forecast. And then the alternative development analysis. So we have no idea when we can schedule the next meeting or move forward until the FAA gives us that information, but we anticipate moving forward early 2023. ASAP core program update. Andrea is going to go over in a lot more detail, but we're done with the completeness review. The ARC review is starting this month. Alex is here to help out with that. And we are completing the final package for the board with all of the ARC comments for the big board meeting in February, where the board will get all of that information. All total core applications received were 40. One was deemed ineligible because it was also had money from Connect Oregon, and that is not acceptable per our statutes, so we had to remove that one. Total request was 3.157 million, 39 applications. Priority 1 FAA AIP grants, there were 26 of them, and they totaled 1.77. Priority 2 resiliency grant application, there was 1 application, and it totaled 22.5. And then priority 3, which is all other aviation development, non-AAP eligible grants, 13 applications, and it totaled 1.357. 3 grant applications were in excess of the 150, which we talked about a couple meetings back. So it wasn't a very large amount, which I didn't expect a large amount. So I was happy that were only 3. 2 projects, there were all 250. 2 projects were from the Dalles, and 1 project is for Eugene. So we're pretty excited about moving forward with this process and getting the ARC together and getting all that information ready and up to the board. So can I answer any questions for board members? Chair Meeker, anybody?
No, and copy all on the request to go above the 150 cap, but once again, that will have to be by special request to the board.
Absolutely.
The core grant is to go to smaller airports. It's not designed to do big projects, at larger airports. So more than willing to entertain it, but we got to remember that is not the standard, and we need to keep it to being not the standard.
Absolutely.
Anything out there from any of the board member? All right, so we get to hear from Andrea.
Okay, let me stop sharing my screen, and Andrea is up.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Chair Meeker and Aviation board members. I'll go ahead and get my presentation up just one moment. Can you all see my presentation okay?
We have everything good.
So today I'm just going to give you an overview of our core program, some updates, the information on our past core grant cycle statuses. Heather did give you a little information on our current cycle that we started in October. And then the final thing today is for the Aviation Board to review and approve our Aviation Review Committee members. Here I just wanted to share Twin Oaks just completed their 3 2021 core grants. And so they did a runway repaving, backup generator, and parking ramp tie downs. And so I just like to show the work that our airports are able to do because of these core grants and how important they are. So as Heather's mentioned, we have our new grant coordinator, Alex Thomas, with us. We're very excited. That also allows Kathy to transition out of the core program. And so a reminder to our grantees who do love to reach out to her that our ASAP email is the best way to make sure that your questions or comments don't get missed as Kathy moves into just focusing on board administration. Another update is that Agate, our grant software provider, is working on an upgrade to our e-grant system, and that is set to be completed by next June. And so we'll reach out to our core grantees with some training and information on that as it becomes available. And then finally, our core Cycle 7 application period was completed in October, and our internal review is complete, and the applications are ready to be reviewed and graded by our the Aviation Review Committee. Since we have some newer board members since last time I presented this information, and then as well as having Alex with us, I just wanted to give a quick overview and background of ASAP and the core program. So ASAP was created by House Bill 2075 in 2015, and it is funded by an increase of 2 cents per gallon on jet fuel and 2 cents per gallon on aviation gas. Originally, the ASAP fund had 3 programs, which were CORE, ROAR, and SOAR. And the funding began in January 2016 and was scheduled to sunset this year, January 1st, 2022. Luckily, House Bill 2434 was passed in the last legislative session, which made our CORE program permanent. Another effect of this legislation was that the ROAR program was closed. As John Pascal mentioned, we do have one ROAR grant still open, which is our Salem Area Chamber of Commerce grant, the marketing grant for commercial air service. So that one is still ongoing. Now the fuel tax funds are split between the CORE program and the SOAR program. We run our core cycle process the same every year. And so we start off with our grant application period, which typically is in October every year. Once that's complete, we do our internal completeness review, and then we also reach out to the Area Commissions on Transportation for their Aviation Review Committee member nominations. Once those have been submitted to us and the board approves, the ARC reviews and grades the applications, and then in January every year, the ARC comes together and compiles a project list to recommend to the Aviation Board. Finally, that's presented at our February Aviation Board meeting, where the board reviews and approves the final grantees, and then after that, we notify and begin the grant agreement process. We are currently in our 7th cycle. So just to give you a little update on our past cycles, cycle 1 and cycle 2 are both completed. The first cycle, we funded 31 grants for a total of almost $1.7 million. The actual funds expended at cycle close was a little under 1.5. And we were able to close out all those by June of 2021. And then cycle 2, we funded 24 grants, total of 1.693 million, and the actual funds expended were just about the total approved for that cycle. And all 24 of those grants were closed as of this past June. Cycle 3, which was 2019 is getting very close to being closed. Hopefully most of them by the end of this year. And we had 23 grants that were funded for a total of 1.782 million. 3 are still active and 2 are in closing stages, and 18 have been closed out. Cycle 4 was our cycle where 20 of our grantees ended up getting 100% funding from the FAA for their AIP grant through the CARES Act. So we had awarded 24 grants for a total of almost $2 million, ended up only funding 4 of them for a total of $500,000. 2 of those grants are still ongoing and 2 have been closed. Cycle 5, we also had grantees that received 100% funding from the FAA on their AIP grants. So out of 43 applications, we ended up having, oh, I didn't get the total on there. You remember what the number is, Kathy?
Oh, there were 37 total. We started with.
Oh, that was last year's. Sorry. Well, anyway, we have, so
that's right, yeah.
For cycle 5, 19 of the 43 received 100% funding. So, and then 5 grants were withdrawn by grantees for various reasons. So we have 9 that are still open, 2 that are still in pre-agreement. We're working on getting those agreements executed, and then 4 in closing stages and 4 have been closed out. Last year, our board awarded our highest grant funding at $3.764 million, 37 applications. 3 of those grantees received Connect Oregon funds, and so those grants were withdrawn. And then 5 were withdrawn by grantees for various reasons. 23 of those grants have been executed and are in progress. And we've got 6 of them that are still in the process of being executed.
There were 19 in active grants in 2020.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So for our core cycle 7, right now we are at our December board meeting where shortly I will request for the board to approve our ARC members. And once that's done, we will get out the application information to them to start reviewing so they can be ready for the meeting in January. Heather gave you some information on this already, but our application cycle ran from October 3rd to the 21st. 39 eligible applications with a funding request of $3.157 million. In the August board meeting, the State Aviation Board approved increasing our maximum grant cap to $250,000. And as Heather mentioned, 3 grantees requested that. Our anticipated funding availability was $3 million. We did have 5 grants that were funded from the past cycle withdrawn due to supply chain issues, increased costs, and some other issues, which returned about $418,000 back into our core revenue. And most of those grantees reapplied for 23 grants. Currently, our outstanding obligations for the open cycles are about $3.6 million. Our carryover from previous cycles is about $3.2 million, and the fuel tax revenue that we've received so far this year is at $2.2 million, with an anticipated $467,000 approximately through the end of the year. And then again, our estimated funding availability was $3 million, and the board does have discretion on that. Finally, I just wanted to give a little review of what the Aviation Review Committee is. So this committee was established by the State Aviation Board. It's comprised of 1 member from each area commission on transportation around the state. And they review the core applications to determine ranking for distribution of grant funds. The ARC uses criteria for consideration that is per statute, ORS 319.020. And so there are 6 standards there. And the ARC determines whether the applications meet these standards, somewhat meets the standards, or does not meet the standards. We last year started a cohort type of review for our ARC members. So what we decided, instead of having every member review every application, that we would divide the applications up between cohorts of 2 to 3 ARC members to review and score in meetings facilitated by our grant coordinators. The ARC reviews, in the January meeting, the ARC reviews all the scores and makes recommendations to break any ties in any of the priority categories. The ARC can take into account for their review application scores, percent of grant match submitted by the applicant, numbers of recommended grants to be considered for a single applicant, and then grant applications dealing with safety projects. Here I have got our list of Aviation Review Committee members that were nominated by their acts. Region 1 did not submit an ARC member for this year, so there won't be a representative from Region 1. And so now ODAV requests that the State Aviation Board review and approve the ARC as presented here.
All right. These guys, for the board members who haven't been through the core process, they do an absolutely fantastic job of going through this, working as cohorts together, putting the local flavor on what they consider important. So, you know, Jim has been at the chair of this for Jeepers Creepers ever since I've been here. And they just do, like I said, yeoman's work. Can't praise them enough. So any questions out there on Andrea's presentation? All right, so we need then, I guess, are we voting on this or are we just doing a motion? So it looks like we're doing a motion. All right. Do I have a motion out there to approve the ARC members for 2023 for the core grant evaluation cycle?
I move to approve the 22-23 ARC list as presented.
Okay, we have a first by Sarah. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I got a second by Kenji. So all those in favor of approving the ARC members for the 2023 core grant evaluation cycle, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing no opposition, the motion has passed unanimously. And once again, pass along our thanks to the ARC members for helping us out tremendously for statewide aviation.
Definitely, thank you so much.
All right, super. So Lisa, I think we got you up next to do a little bit of housekeeping on some of our dealer's licenses out there. True?
Yes, that is correct. So
all right.
Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
We have your screen.
Got it.
Okay, so what this is, I'm Lisa, I'm the fiscal assistant. And this is just some housekeeping to, it's administrative to align the rule with the statute for the dealer license fee. And it's a request to initiate the permanent rulemaking for OAR 738060. So this is a rule change summary. The changes to OAR 738060 will remove the stated fee amount, remove references to the dealer stickers, and add instructions for submitting the quarterly reports by the dealers. And the steps taken are listed below on the slide. And this is pretty brief. So we have a request to initiate the rulemaking. So for 0020, we want to remove the stated dollar amount and change to the statutorily required fee. The rule lists the fee at $100 and the statute lists the fee at $250. And that's where we want to align that. 0040, we want to delete references to dealer stickers. That's not something that we use. 0050 is to update the required reporting language as follows that's listed there. And we're also going to add the due dates into the rule. And this is our timeline. Right now we're in December. We're here at the board meeting. And then in 2023, we hope to have the rules to the board by April. And so this was pretty brief. Now, Chair Meeker, ODAV requests authorization from the Aviation Board to initiate a permanent rulemaking process for OAR 73806 dealer license fee.
Okay, do we have any questions about Lisa's request overall from any board member? All right, pretty simple, kind of housekeeping, cleaning up things and making it better. So with that, do I have a motion to approve initiation of rulemaking for OAR 736060, which is the aircraft dealer's license?
Chair Maker, I'll make a motion to approve the, this is Steve, I'll make a motion to approve the rulemaking process.
Okay, we have a first motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Catherine? Yes. Catherine, okay. All right, so all those in favor of approving the initiation of rulemaking for OAR 736060 for aircraft dealer licensing, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing no opposition, motion has approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're running just a little bit ahead, which is always good. Puts us to the lunch time. When we come back, I would recommend that we come back just at the top of the hour at 12 o'clock. And that will get, go ahead.
Sorry. We still have, we need to do Kristen's report is next. And then we're gonna take the lunch break.
Did I show a lunch break between then and now?
So I'm sorry, I'm looking at an updated schedule, older version. My apologies.
We're always in favor of lunch.
Keep going.
Chair Meeker, if you would like to proceed with the finance manager update and then take lunch, we can do that as well. It is your call.
It's your, is Kristen in a hurry to go?
No.
Am I hearing yes? No?
Kristen's say
whatever
works.
I don't care either way.
All right, well, let's just take lunch. We'll start again at the top of the hour, and then we'll drive right under that. Gives us a nice time to discuss your update for finance. And then I guess we're going to see you a little bit later about board practices, which is a good thing to discuss. Okay.
All right.
See you all at noon.
This one.
Okay, we're back in session, and I believe we're over to finance update from Kristen, as well as a little bit of board practices. Over to you, Kristen.
Okay, great, thank you. So let me share my screen here.
All right, so we're at the end of the brief already with questions. Fantastic.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so here we go. Okay, so for the, let's see, I don't think it started at the beginning. Okay, there we go. Okay, so for my update today, I'm going to go over the 22 key performance measures results and the annual performance review report. And then I'm also going to go over the results of the Aviation Board Best Practice Survey. So the 22 annual performance progress report is made up of our KPMs, which are our key performance measures. And so those are approved by the legislature, and they are also submitted to the Legislative Fiscal Office, the Chief Financial Office. They're part of our budget, and I present those to you every year as well. Okay, so the first KPM is number 1, % of runways in good or better condition. So this is measuring our runway pavement condition. So it's really looking at the pavement maintenance program. And so we're using the PCA data for this one. So that's the pavement condition index. And so for 2022, we had a score of 95%. So that means that 95% of the 67 paved public use airports in the state do have a runway that is in good or better condition. So that was a good result for this year. Our second KPM is the % of runways meeting or exceeding approach surface standards. So for this KPM, we're actually looking at all of the public use airports in the state, and it's really measuring the obstructions. So FAA Part 77.25 requires a 20:1 glide slope ratio. And so you can see in 2022, we received a score of 61%. And so some airports do have more than one runway. So this is looking at to see if at least one of those runways met the requirements. So you can see over the last 5 years, we've stayed pretty consistent between the 60 to 62% range. We haven't had too much of a change here. You can see our target is 94%. So we're never going to get 100% on this one because some of the obstructions can never be removed, such as hills or mountains. Number 3 is the number of public use airports inspections conducted. So this year we conducted 131 inspections, and that was out of a possible 144. So we conduct 97 FAA sponsored inspections, so our 50-10 inspections over a 3-year period. So we do 1/3 of those every year. So this year we conducted 32 of those. So we reached 100% of our required FAA inspections. And then we also do quarterly self-inspections at the 28 state airports. So for this year, we conducted 99 of those out of a possible 112. And so I will note that Oahe State Airport, we missed 4 of those inspections, but we always do because that airport is inaccessible by land. And so we can't get there because we don't have an aircraft. So we do rely on local pilots to give us an update on the airport conditions at that airport. Number 4 is the percent of federal funds obligated or spent. So for this one, we are looking to make sure that we're utilizing all of our NPE funds. So those are non-primary entitlement funds. So this year we were looking at our AIP funds, so the airport improvement projects. So we have the 12 NIPIAS airports that can receive up to $150,000 per year for AIP projects. But then we're also looking to make sure we're utilizing our new bipartisan infrastructure funds as well. So we just recently started receiving $2 million per year for airport projects. So we're making sure that we have all of those planned to obligate those in the future. So this one, we're always looking good on that KPM. So number 5 is customer service. So this one is looking at, we sent a survey, some of you board members might have received this as well. So we sent this to over 4,000 stakeholders. So it included pilots, aircraft owners, business owners at airports, airport managers, airport tenants, really anybody who signed up to receive our emails received this survey. And so they were asked a series of questions, and then we rated them as far as how is our customer service doing. So you can see in this chart, 2022 is the dark blue line, and the green line is our target. So we're aiming to get 91% customer satisfaction. So in this year for accuracy, we received a score of 75%, availability of information, 70, expertise, 78, helpfulness, 74, overall customer service, 68, and timeliness, 66%. So in this survey, we also offered the participants a chance to leave comments to let us know how we're doing and how we can improve. And we did get a lot of comments on the survey. So Betty has all of those comments, and we're going to look over them and see how we can improve on customer service in the future. Number 6 is the percent of aircraft registered. So this is looking at our aircraft registration collections. So it's really looking at the percent of aircraft that are registered in our database versus the percent that have gone expired and inactive. So it's really looking at how good we're doing on our collections there. And So we have an aircraft specialist whose job is, part of their job is to do aircraft registration collections. So Lisa was doing this with our agency for several years. And recently she was promoted within the agency. So now we have Jerry, that's our new aircraft registration specialist. And she's been doing it for a little over 3 months. So you can see this one, we always have pretty good scores here. This year, we received a score of 89%, so just a little under our target of 90%, but still looking pretty good. And so the revenue for aircraft registration, it's very important to the agency because we use that for our grant match for our FAA 10% grant match for airport projects. Okay, number 7, so this is our last one. So this is the board KPM. So it's the percent of best practices met by the board. So this year we received a score of 88%. So that was based on the survey that you filled out. So our highest score was last year, we got 97%. So this year we're kind of right in the middle. We had a low score in 2017 of 73%. So we've come up quite a bit since then. And then I'm going to go over the questions with you all as well in a little more detail. So the questions for the survey, those are based on DAS and LFO. They send those to us. And those are questions that are sent to all boards, so not just our board. And so we had, let me move my thing here. So at the time of the survey, we only had 6 board members. Sarah was an official member yet at the time of the survey, so I didn't have her do the survey. And we had 5 board members that completed the survey at the time that I took this snapshot. So since we had 5 doing the survey, if we got 1 no, that would be an 80% score. And if we got 2 no's, that would be a 60% score. So you can see the score for each one here. We had a few 80%, so a few with 1 no on them, including the executive director's performance expectations are current. Number 3, the agency's missions and high-level goals are current and applicable. Number 7, the agency policy option packages are aligned with their mission and goals. Number 10, the director is appropriately accounting for resources. And number 15, the board reviews its management practices to ensure best practices are utilized. And then it looks like we just had 2 60%. So number 2, the executive director receives annual performance feedback. And number 5, the board is appropriately involved in review of key communications for the agency. And so the average there was 88%.
Hey, Kristen.
Yes.
Just for those members, for the 2 members who said that the director did not receive annual performance feedback, it may be that they didn't see the feedback. Can we get a copy sent of the feedback to those individuals? The results have been sent off, but I do think it's important that each board member, kind of have the full picture. I guess if those 2 board members could contact me, because I'm not sure if you have a copy of the performance feedback, but I do.
I don't have a copy of that, but yeah, if you could send that or if Betty could, that'd be great.
If a board member has not seen the performance feedback, please drop me a line and I will send you that feedback. How about that? Okay. Any questions? I think, was it Catherine? Did you have a question?
Nope.
No? Any questions out there? Okay. Back to you, Kristen.
Okay, so that was actually my last slide. So sounds like no one has any questions about the survey. Do you have any questions about the KPMs in general?
No, Kristen, I think you'll see when we come up to board member interest items, I specifically highlighted, I would like to go over each KPM in depth with the question of, do we need it? Yes, no. Is it the right measure? Yes, no. Anything we're supposed to add? Yes, no. So we'll probably have some more on KPM deep dives here coming up for the board members.
Okay, that'd be great.
Any other board member out there? Okay, super. Thank you very much, Teresa.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Sarah had a hand up?
Yes, I did just have a quick question for Kristen. As it relates more as a fiscal update and that KPM number 4. I was just curious, and partially maybe I need to have a sit down with you, Kristen, just to go through the budget to make sure I'm understanding it. But with FAA having the agency and all sponsors upfronting environmental costs, I was wondering how that was worked into the budget, and if that's something maybe in the future you can update the board on, and how that is going to be impacted, especially with all of the projects upcoming with Bill and the regular CIP.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had a lot of internal discussion about that recently because when we did make the budget originally, we did not know about that upfronting of costs. So we have been brainstorming how we're going to be dealing with that. So, and we will give board updates when we come up with a solution for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
All righty. So that brings us then, if I got my my note here correct, is we're a little bit to Tony and some state airports.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my my title slide?
We can.
Okay. Provide my airports update. I had shared this in our previous board meeting back in October. I just want to share it again. I'm trying to help get this information out to anyone and everyone who hasn't already seen that we're transitioning our airport updates and outreach through GovDelivery. And there's a link on our homepage that you can find at oregon.gov/aviation to click and subscribe to emails from us. You would look for the state airport contact group for the airport or airports that you specifically want to receive updates for. And you can also manage your subscriptions or unsubscribe anytime, including for Heather's programs or for the board as well. So you can kind of one-stop shop to manage all your subscriptions. All updates for our airports are going through GovDelivery, so that's how you can stay the most informed. Upcoming airport work, we just have 2 nights that we're going to have closures at the Aurora State Airport for core drilling. This is for the runway design for the rehab project that's coming up. So we are expecting 2 night closures, December 8th and 9th, from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. each day. NOTAMs are going to be the most current and up-to-date way to stay informed regarding these closures. If the work is completed early, we will reopen the runway early. On the Independence Fence project, construction has been completed. There is still some signage work to do. So we will be working on installing signage along the fence line and on the gates, but the construction has been completed. And Madam Chair, I understand you wanted me to address one of the comments we received about this project. There was a comment that took issue with a permit and some fire access requirements during this project, and there was an issue where the contractor did not pull permits. It was their requirement to get a permit for this project, and they did not do that. So when we became aware of the issue, we did stop construction until they could resolve that issue. And then during the permitting process, there were some additional fire requirements for access that we did accommodate before construction was completed. So we did make a couple changes to incorporate those requirements, and those have been made. So and then on the planning, I understand this project has not been the most popular. This project began at least as early as the master planning process, as far back as 2018. And when I started in the department, we were about 90% design in the spring of 2020. And one issue that I will take accountability for in the master plan, despite this project being shown as the first capital improvement project, it did call for in the prior chapters for some additional correspondence and communication with the tenants out of the airport. This is something that I was not aware was not completed by the time we got to 90% design completion. And so when we became aware of some issues and some lack of correspondence in the fall of 2021, we held some public meetings. We had a couple open houses where we talked with the tenants and the through the fence air park there, and had made some further changes to try to meet as many of their requests as possible. So we did make some additional changes. We made some additional gates for access and tried to incorporate those as much as we could.
Tony?
Finally, I do, go ahead.
Just overall, appreciate all the additional engagement. Are the gates working? I get that. I mean, from Blake's letter, I got the issue that, or is it just that the gates are closed? Can you give me an update just on today's accessibility at Independence?
So my understanding right now is all the gates are operational, and with the outreach that we sent over the summer, all the gate code information has been shared, and with that gate code information to those who need it, you can just input the code and the gates will open and provide access. There have been some recurring issues with one of the gates where it's been, we believe, struck by a vehicle occasionally, and this has put the gate out of service, where it's been stuck midway or halfway between open and closed, and there's been some damage to some of the equipment where we've had to secure the gate until repairs can be made. But we do have 3 automated gates that provide access to all of the hangars and facilities at the Independence Airport.
Okay, do you have any, so basically what you're telling me is the gates are operational almost full time, so we've got through that issue?
Correct, yeah, the repairs have been made, and we're looking at some improvements to protect the gate from inadvertent damage that has happened a couple of times on one particular gate. Okay,
this is just one of the, this history, gate closures are just an issue with me. Back when I was at Charleston, we installed some of the worst gates known to mankind, and it was an amazing pain in the ass because the things broke every other week. So very interested in making sure that we have gates that stay open 24/7, 365, not 24/8, or 24/2, 212. It needs to be the full time, and they need to stay open. They need to be reliable.
Right. So so the gates, they are in operation, and our goal is to keep them in operation. We're not interested in having gates locked, but they are by default closed, but then accessible with the input of code.
Got that. Betty, when was the last time, have we ever had a board meeting at Independence? I don't remember ever having a meeting there.
Not that I know of. Would you like to?
Yeah, we should maybe put them on the list and go out and just, press some flesh and just, make sure that we're meeting their concerns.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, and on that topic, the last part of the comment was about outreach and tenant engagement and relations, and so I just wanted to say that does continue to be a priority, and that is something that we're working on, and hence the Gov delivery to make sure that we're communicating with everyone effectively.
Okay, and I'm sure they appreciate that. It's a lot of folks, they may be grumpy with us, but as long as they know that their voice is heard, that goes a long ways. So I appreciate that. Steve, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I had to make an emergency trip down the valley about a month ago. And on my way back up, I chose to go 99W and just by chance came by the airport and saw the fence project as it was finishing. I didn't get an opportunity to test the gate operations, but I can say from the secure looking side of it, it is much more secure than previous openness. So just it's from a security perspective, certainly looks better. I can't talk to its operational readiness, but yes, it's much more of a secure looking airport now.
That's good to hear. Especially, just basically keeping those deer out of the runway environment it's always a good thing. Any other board member? All right, Tony, what else you got?
Okay, moving on to Toledo. The Toledo apron reconstruction project was completed in just 11 days and $25,000 approximately under budget. This apron really turned out great. Heard a lot of compliments and thank yous from users out of Toledo. And in fact, I did hear from one of our tenants there that with this improvement being made, that they are looking at constructing a new hangar at the airport to replace one of their aging hangars and just invest back into the airport, into the community. And that's really a great thing to hear. So very excited how this project turned out. And if anyone is wanting to go check it out, I would encourage it. Okay. So other upcoming project updates at the Aurora Airport, our surface seal and markings project, we've held 2 open house meetings. I reported on that before, but we are now working on 100% design after the FAA has provided their comments and acceptance of the CSPP, the phasing plan. And we are still looking at construction in the spring of 2023. The Aurora emergency backup generator, we're waiting on the grant in the spring of 23 to move forward with that project. And at Cape Blanco, Heather already touched on this, but we are working on it. We're approaching 90% design for that project. For Prospect Runway reconstruction, still working on design, and we're still planning to construct summer of 23. At Sluts Bay, the CADEX has been completed, and we're working on 90% design. On obstruction removal, no change at Aurora. The FAA review for the EA rewrite is still going on. We are working on starting appraisals, and easement acquisition will begin after the EA is complete. For Malino, the survey has been completed, and we're scheduling appraisals. The trees with the easements on our property will be removed this fall and winter prior to nesting season in the spring of 23. And then at Chiloquin, survey has very recently commenced now that Malina has been completed. Just an update on surface incident mitigation. We have had 0 VPDs and runway incursions since our last meeting at Aurora. We are working with our airport groups on developing drivers training programs, and specifically we are creating one for a driver training program for access to the movement area, which is all on state property. We held a public hearing on our rule for VPD violations and issuance of civil penalties. The public hearing was on October 20th. The comment period was extended until November 11th. That time has now come and passed. So we have received additional comments, and so we are still in the process of reviewing those and looking at all of the comments and then making those any changes and the final rulemaking action that we're going to prepare and bring to the board for your consideration at a future meeting. Just another reminder, our seasonal airports closed November 1st, and they will reopen on May 1st. Those are Crescent Lake State Airport, McKenzie Bridge State Airport, Santiam Junction, and Tokati. And I mentioned this in the last meeting, but with winter weather and the forecast in the valley, even tonight, I just want to send out a reminder that we do not report surface conditions at most airports. Most of our airports have additional remarks for surface conditions not reported. That's because with our limited staffing, we were not able to observe and report conditions at all 28 of our airports. For some of our airports in the valley, we may issue a NOTAM if we're unable to observe conditions and report them. For Aurora, we try to report conditions and keep them as updated as possible. But again, limited staffing and daytime hours only. We will issue FICON NOTAMs when operations observe reportable conditions, and plowing will be extremely limited with, again, limited staffing and equipment. We do not do de-ice, though we are trying to look into de-icing at Aurora. That's something that will require additional stormwater monitoring and permitting, and then additional equipment as well. We do welcome PIREPs. If pilots fly into any of our airports and want to report a condition or anything that they'd like to report. And please do check NOTAMs for the latest conditions at any of our airports if we have conditions reported. And then if you have any other questions, please do call our operations staff.
Tony, on the discussion of possible de-icing at Aurora, is that going to fall underneath the FBO? Who will actually run that operation if it comes to bear?
Well, there's two components. One is aircraft de-icing, which would be the FBO. The other is airfield de-icing, and that would be us.
Okay, copy all, but we don't plan to touch an aircraft. I just wanted to make sure of that.
Correct.
Okay, copy that. Any questions from board members out there? Sarah, go ahead.
Sorry, have been hearing from me a lot today. Tony, thank you for your update. I did want to follow up with you on Joseph. I was hoping to have something to do with the status of the instrument approach. For those, there was some discussion at the OAMA conference in Ashland with FAA staff, and that has been delayed because of Oklahoma City. And then also the NIPIA status or designation for Joseph has changed. And I know Kate was going to look into that on the FAA side. And I was wondering if you've had any update from her.
Okay, I don't have an update on either at the moment. In prior conversations with the FAA, there was some questions about instrument approach being filed, but not being eligible because of the current markings on the runway. There's some uncertainty because the markings that they were talking about are not required for the instrument approach, and so we were not looking to make those changes prior to filing the instrument approach procedures. So they had agreed to that tentatively over the summer, and we were expecting for the procedures to be filed, but then we found out, as you said, during the conference that they kind of reneged on that. So I don't have an update at this time. I'm still trying to work through that and see what the issue was, and can we go ahead and get those procedures filed with our current conditions, because I don't believe the additional markings are required. Okay. As far as the Joseph classification change, if those instrument approach procedures were filed, then I believe that Joseph would have not changed its NIPIA category, because the instrument approach procedures would have kept it in its current role. That was what we were planning for when the FAA had asked for some additional information, and then when the FAA did not publish the procedures, then that caused for the airport to drop in the category.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and hopefully at the next board meeting, if you have any updates, this is the time of year where that approach is desperately needed for live flight. And then again, just the funding attachment with that NIPIAS. So, because it's my understanding that the holdup is a reference to marking in the AIM, which is Airman's Information Manual, not a design standard. And so if we could keep pushing on that issue, I would appreciate it, as would the residents of Eastern Oregon and their elected officials. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Tony, I'd like to follow up on that as well. We probably need, we need to put some flight following on this. And I'm confused. Generally, the FAA is very clear. It's, you want this, you need that. I've never had the FAA go, well, you don't really need it, but I want it. I question it. I'm just going to throw the bullshit flag. Let's run that to ground. If it's not a published standard, then we need to call up the FAA and have a conversation with whoever is saying it is a standard. It's a yes, no, a standard is a standard. This should be an easy thing to break through. I know saying the word easy and the FAA is sometimes not congruent, but this seems like we should clear up this confusion rather quickly. A standard is a standard or it's not. There's no middle gray area.
Absolutely. Working on it, and I will have an update for the next meeting.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks. Okay, sure. Any other questions for Tony before we leave out on the State Airports Managers update? Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Meeker. Tony, I just wanted to give you and your staff kudos for addressing the vehicle deviations at Aurora. That, I mean, I know you're still working through the comments, but that's a huge improvement from the numbers we've seen previously. So obviously some of that outreach that you're doing is working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that moves us on to close up with other time for other business. Anything that the staff needs to bring up before we get into board updates? Going once, going twice. All righty. So, Kathy, could you do me a favor and pull up? I sent you those 3 slides. I just want to confirm with the board members that I've accurately captured what they wanted more information on. And then for the board members out there, the intent is once we come to an agreed list of things that you want additional information on, we'll just pop a couple of additional 2 hours max education working sessions. They won't be a board session, they'll be a working session. Perhaps starting in January, maybe March, and we can just hit them every other month until we get through everything that y'all want to get through, if that makes sense.
That was odd. Okay, let me see if I can get this to work right. So I'm going to go carefully over. Get my share screen. This one. There. I'm going to drive this over for everybody.
Okay, so we started off, sent out a request for board members to email the staff or give a phone call. Just contact the staff with additional items you want education about or some additional information about. And the first one, the education and workplace development, came from a conversation that we had at the end of the last board session in October. So if you're still with that, we'll leave that on there. And then I think Kenji had brought up a very good topic about what are we doing for our urban air mobility and advanced air mobility. Specifically, basically we got drones doing delivery. And also how it all integrates with the current transportation system and who's working that integration piece. So next, we also got a couple of you had questions about how we do in leases. So we'll take a deep dive into leases. And then some of the minimum standards through the fence agreements, KPMs, like I mentioned before with Kristen, I think we do need to take a look about, the KPMs that we report and why. Through the fence, as always, we've got a actual formalized program with through the fence agreements. That's actually in ORS. So I think that's really good to get up to speed and educated on that. And then next, land use compatibility, has some discussion with that, but we also got a handbook out there that be interested, because I'm not sure if I've actually read that land use compatibility handbook and what we can do with that product to help us achieve some of our other goals. And then board practices, transparency is always a good thing. And then the disadvantaged business enterprise goals and compliance, and a little bit of how we're doing on that. So those were what I captured from the emails that everybody sent. What did I miss, or what did I construe that, you know, you just wanted it on, you didn't really mean it to be an education list? I didn't miss anything? Oh, come on, guys.
Madam Chair, if I might make a comment on the DBE goals and compliance, this is Kathy. Your timing is really good because next year we will be doing the update. It's our triennial update on our DBE program and program. So you will be receiving that as part of your 2023 schedule.
Okay. So what I would suggest is, since the staff kind of knows what's coming up, is we throw these to the staff and they kind of get them scheduled, or they come back to us and say, you know, we're going to do it this time period, or we can knock this off with a quick 5-minute discussion on how we do things. But I think that they could probably come back and tell us how to fit this into the schedule best.
Okay. We can do that. Can I ask a clarifying question on the transparency about how and when materials posted prior and after a board meeting? That's a 1-minute answer. And then if you want more, then I'd like the clarification if I may. Our practices are to post materials when they publish a week in advance. So all materials that go to the board are published at the same time on our website. The day before the board meeting, all presentation materials and any submitted public comment is posted to the website. And then after the board meeting, once we convert the Zoom video is posted, that link is posted to the website. It's actually posted over on our YouTube channel when we get that fixed today. And that way it's easy public access to the public after the day after the board meeting. So does that answer the question, or was there something else that I missed? Because that's how I understood the question.
I think that was Sarah's question. So let me go ahead, let me throw this over to her.
All right, thank you. And Kathy, I know you and staff at ODAV do everything above and beyond the requirement as far as notification and documentation of the meetings. My comment, when I attended OAMA, part of why I was there was wanting to talk to airport sponsors and their consultants to ask what we could be doing better. And I heard from a couple saying, hey, we don't know when are we going to see the agenda, or, you know, when do the draft minutes come out? And so while I know, you know, all of this, I think perhaps just a very short PDF document linked on the board webpage that says just what you told us, Kathy. So if somebody has a question, they can click on it and it's there, and then nobody has to wonder, because I do know that staff does everything they're supposed to do.
Got it. That's an easy thing to do. We can get that done. Thank you for that clarification. And Madam Chair, would you like a check-in, especially as we transition to eventually a new board administrator? We can do a check-in at that point too and find out, I know that's next year, but add that to something maybe in our August, a touch base on how's this working, and just ask the question. Would that be acceptable to the board?
It's fine. Well, anybody out there got an objection? No, I think you're good.
Okay, thank you. Any other clarifications?
So Betty, could I give this 3 PowerPoint to you, and then you can kind of come back and say, you know, whether we start in January or whether we start in March, in just a couple of hours. And the intent is it's not board meetings. There's no board updates. This is pure board education. There's no public comment. It is a working session only, education only, no votes, just education.
So work session. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. And I would suggest if we're going to meet in January for work session, for January and February, that we consider doing it remote, given the weather conditions and the locations of our board members, rather than asking everyone to try to get together in person for winter months that we do those remote.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's all, that closes that. And then coming up, we didn't have too much board directions other than Tony, a little bit of update on Joseph. Would like to see something back on that. That would be great. What else do we have?
We need to talk about February.
Right. So, yeah, the meeting schedule, let me put up, I've got a, so I'm trying to click and talk at the same time. It is not a good combination. I sent you all a draft for the 2023 schedule, and I can put that up on the screen to for conversation.
That would be great.
Found it. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, what does it look like? Is that good? Okay. So let me put this up on the big screen for people in the room here. There we go. You see okay? Yeah, okay. All right, so based on the information I received from the board planning session and from our staff, this is somewhat what we put together. And I sent it out to you for your comment for dates and possible locations. I just heard a comment about Independence, which would probably be something later in the year. If you'd like to do that, if you want to add work sessions, the alternate months might be the time to do that via Zoom.
Okay, and then so for the February one, we talked about doing it in conjunction with OWAMA, but OWAMA is thinking about moving theirs to a one-day virtual session followed by a legislative meet and greet. And they're thinking that it would be late February or early March. So I don't know that we want to postpone our board's meeting to coincide with OWAMA, so we can just do it the first Thursday in February, if that's the board's preference. And again, there's nothing.
We could stick with OWAMA and tail in on their legislative meet and greet. That would be fantastic. I mean, it'd be nice to have a legislative meet and greet. And if they're already having one, that we don't have to worry about it.
What does that do for our core grants? Because the February meeting is the big meeting where you approve all the core grants. So if we delay it to March, is that
okay?
Or we can do two. I mean,
I was going to say, what if we did the core grant one virtually and then
tap the yeah, we can do that.
Or the suggestion from the chair was to do work sessions. If we could do a work session around the OWAMA and take care of business at the beginning of February, so the work here can proceed, because we've got, if you will note here, you have your fiscal annual review, we've got a core grant approvals. This is year 2, so we will be looking at SOAR. So we've got some stuff, business we need to conduct in February that is time sensitive.
And that's fine. We can keep it there, and then just if you could ask OWAMA just to send us an invite to if they would they be willing to have us attend their legislative meet and greet as well. We'd love to show up, and I imagine probably not all of us will show up, but I just want to make sure that if we accidentally have a quorum, we're good.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that.
Madam Chair, I'll be able to notice that as work session for you, so that would avoid any issues.
Okay, that works.
Good.
And then we're looking for April in Astoria and June in Redmond Bend Madras area.
Well, we should probably, we've been to Redmond. There's no need to repeat airports if we haven't been to some of our own airports. So let's not go back to Redmond, been there, been to Bend. So if we're looking for Central Oregon, that would leave us with Madras, and that we can probably get a tour of Erickson, because generally they've always teed themselves up in the core grants, not the core grants, excuse me, the Connect Oregon. And so we had a little bit of disconnect with this last Connect cycle, as I disagreed with where they prioritized their grant over other grants to state airports. So if we have maybe a little bit of interaction with them beforehand, we won't disagree with them at the next Connect cycle.
Okay. So for June, we will have it in Madras. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
I'll reach out to our board member if he can
arrange the tour. Yeah. Yeah. And then August, that's up to you if you want to do Far Eastern Oregon. Pendleton has invited us repeatedly to come out there. So if that's someplace, and Roundup isn't until September. So, and they've got a brand new hotel at the airport that they're wanting to show off. So if you want to consider August for Pendleton, perhaps. And then the fall meeting, if you want that at Independence. Well, first, before we pick Independence, let me make sure that there is meeting space availability out there that can meet our requirements. But we'll look into that one. And then December, again, I would suggest Salem just because of weather, or doing a remote one in the winter months.
Yeah, no problem with going back, you know, at the end, because generally you have good weather. This last example, this first time that I've had any problem getting to a board meeting in the 8 years I've been on the board. So I think December is safe back in Salem. Steve?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, and I'll give an update a little bit more when we have our open session for that. Be happy to, at some point, either next year or in the future. You know, we've hosted here, but it's always been at PDX. I would prefer, if we ever did one here, to take it to Hillsborough. There's some interesting things going on, as well as there's a very great education campus. It would be best to go during the school year because the education campus is actually on airport. So, you know, during the school year, it would be great, especially if that's one of our initiatives for the year, is to understand how we're going to train the workforce of the future. I'd really like to be able to have the board members have an idea and take a look at what some of the local school districts, community college, and industry is doing there.
We would love to. You know, shame on me for not thinking about that earlier, because we hear so much of what's happening in Hillsborough. I've heard it, you know, every year I've been on the board. So we would love to take you up on that opportunity if we could.
We have two programs there. One is a school district related, and one is an after-school program. So absolutely, yeah. So however it fits in, we can accommodate. There's also meeting space and hotels very near the airport.
Okay, that's a winner. We will take you up. So either August or October, maybe?
Either one.
Okay.
October would probably work better because students would be in. August, we wouldn't have students in a classroom.
Good point. Good point. So October?
Then December could be Independence if we want to.
December Independence?
If we can.
And then August at Pendleton?
August at where?
Pendleton?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'll send out an updated version of this to make sure I heard you right.
All right, fantastic then.
And I'll put in the tentative work session dates, which would be via Zoom. So you can mark your calendars for that. It's easier to mark a calendar and cancel than try to shoehorn something into your busy schedule.
Okay.
Okay. Got it. Okay, let's stop the screen share. Okay.
That's it.
All right. So we're going to do the board updates from board members.
Just one last thing, you know, I'm going to be stepping off the board. My term ends up in June, so we need a new chair. So if you have an interest, you know, once the transportation advisor takes their seat, we should probably, Betty, think about forwarding our thoughts on, you know, they can make whoever they want chair. So but we can offer our thoughts on who perhaps is interested and who we think would make a great chair. So If you have an interest, if you have a desire or the time to be a chair, it does take a little bit of administrative work, but it's fun. Please send me a note and we'll get that discussion going. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Betty.
That will also create a vacancy for another board member.
Yep.
So we need to start talking about that.
And I think at this time, I think Kathy could advertise board members in her sleep. She's done this so many times.
Okay,
anything out there from board members out and about? Okay, anything from the staff? Betty?
I think Steve said he had something to share.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had just didn't hit the unmute quick enough. I think most of you had seen media reports. It certainly was, I don't know if it made it throughout the state, but it certainly made it, actually I think it made it nationally as well. Alaska Horizon Group donated a Q400 aircraft to Portland Community College and their aviation maintenance program. The aircraft is going to be based at Hillsborough Airport. It's to be used with the PCC program. You know, if you follow the industry trends, there's a need for over 500,000 pilots and another 500,000 mechanics over the next decade. And training and interest in that is at its highest level ever. Joe Sprague, the president of Verizon, was in town for the handover of the aircraft. The president of PCC was in attendance as well. The airport, I was there to represent the airport, and it will be stored at the airport. It will be used for hands-on training. It will not fly, but it will be able to do all measures of maintenance and including ground run-ups and all other activities for the students to work on. It will also tie in with Hillsborough School Districts and the OACE program, which is the one that is run by the Hillsborough School District, the School District Foundation, and the Oregon International Airshow Foundation. So that attracts high school students that are interested in all measures of aviation science, whether it's pilots, mechanics, or engineering across the board. So this will tie into that program as well. So it's a great opportunity. Thanks to the partners at Horizon. They are retiring the Q400s. They could have easily sold that aircraft off to be used by somebody else, but instead they made an investment in workforce development. And we are very happy to support that as well at the airport.
That's awesome. Hey, Betty, would it be possible with our session when we go out and see Hillsborough, can we put out an invitation to our friends at the Department of Education and our friends to Business Oregon? Come down and see what Hillsborough is doing for workforce development and education?
Yes, we can.
Kenji.
Thanks, Chair Meeker. So Steve, quick question on that piece. Do you know if Hillsborough will also be reaching out to other regional technical schools as well? For example, there's CTech down in Salem, and I know there's a program out in McMinnville as well. So I was just wondering whether the region would be connected to that educational opportunity, because I think it's with the shortage of aviation folks, it'd be great to expand that reach as far as possible.
I would be happy to introduce the classroom itself is run by Hillsborough School District, but it is supported by a foundation called Oregon Aerospace Careers for Everyone. And their goals, I don't mean to speak for them, but what they have stated, their goals is to replicate this program in as many different locations as they can. This just being the first one to get it off the ground. They would like to do a capital campaign to actually, move out of the small classroom that they're using right now as kind of their beta test of this. They had hoped to have interest in students, and fill the program within a few years. They have filled their program, their capacity. There are 50 students in each of the 4 years. They filled it in the first 2 years. So they are busting at the seams of their capacity. I know that they would like to, and we've been in discussions with them about expansions of campus at Hillsborough specifically, but I know in our discussions with them that they would like to kind of take this as to other institutions across the state and see the level of interest in replicating these types of aviation career education programs. So what I know is, yes, this foundation would like to continue that. The details of how they have and who they have reached out to, I don't have that, Kenji.
Copy that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, I look forward. The session at Hillsborough is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of people up there. We've had that. I can't remember the. We've had the board chair, the gal. I can't remember her name to say. The first board chair of the organization down in Hillsborough has been in front of the board before, and it'd be fun to see what's happened since she transitioned out. Oh, go ahead. We have Kenji.
Yeah, sorry about that. I totally forgot. This slipped my mind, but I'm actually heading up a task group for the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, and I think I might have mentioned it. It's dealing with best practices for use cases, for example, drone delivery. The other ones include like news operations, video operations, agriculture, you name it, for community outreach within external and external stakeholders. And that's underway, and we should be coming out with a report probably sometime in March, which will be super helpful for anybody in the drone industry. And we plan on putting out not only best practices, but actual documents people can utilize in their own individual companies as well.
Fantastic.
Yep.
That is good to hear. All right. Well, it's coming upon the hour, so if there's no questions or any inputs from anyone else, I'll be quiet and let's see if anybody chimes in.
You want to remind you about the executive session?
Oh, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep track of where we're at. So other business, any board or staff, other business, I don't believe staff, Betty, we don't have any other business to bring up at this time.
Okay.
Right, correct?
Correct.
Right. And
executive session.
Right, that's as soon as we adjourn, she'll announce that. So agenda input, it sounds like we got quite a bit of direction to staff for February. We have that list and I will get that back out to you. I will get the updated dates, but we will put on the next February, the February board meeting to be on that first Thursday, and then work with Awama on noticing that as a work session for the board. So we can be here specifically for that event. Is that the direction from the board?
Oh, I don't even, if they just invite us, I don't even think it has to be a work session. I just want to make sure that we're, because we can have a quorum show up at a party function. We just got to not, huddle in a corner and talk business.
Through that. We will make sure that we put it out there though, that folks will be there, just to be as transparent as possible.
Okay. Yeah, if there's anything that we can, show up and help promote that Owama wants us to promote, more than happy to be there.
Okay. I think if there's anything that I missed. So there's nothing else on the agenda from our point of view. Betty, we're good here on the staff side. Chair? Good on your side?
Nope.
Okay. And you have that announcement at the end of the agenda for you to announce what is coming up next with the executive session.
Okay. Well then, speaking of executive session, let me go ahead and close out this session. So we're closed. And then I will see you all. We have the link for the executive session, Kathy?
Yes, we do. That is a separate Zoom link, and it will be posted here. We'll take about a 15-minute break so I can switch things over and people can stretch, and we'll be able to get that going at 1:15.
Okay, so back here at 1:15. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Oh, we got Stacy. Question.
It's not that. I just want to make sure you do have to open the executive session. So
yes,
with the little, you've got to do the little disclaimer, we'll call it.
Copy that.
Okay.
So, yeah, when we're going to get onto the other Zoom and do it as a separate meeting because it was noticed as a separate meeting.
And so this is for the little spiel that I have to say at the beginning. This is for consult with counsel for legal actions. If I can't remember the exact words, I've got it somewhere stored on my computer. We're not talking about anything else, right, Stacey? Just the legal.
No, that's fine. The only thing, it's probably not that big of a deal. I think you should say it now while you have an open meeting to announce that we're going into executive, because the disclaimer is for that purpose. So I would do that now instead of when we switch over to the executive session.
Okay, let me, Kathy, do you have that language handy? Otherwise I'm gonna have to go dig for it.
I'm grabbing it real quick. Stand by one. I'm going to share my screen. There you go.
So per ORS 192-660, subparagraph 2H, we are going to go into executive session to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Members of the media may attend per ORS 192.660, subparagraph 4, but are not to disclose the information from this meeting. All information in this executive session shall not be disclosed. Media also shall not audio or video record the executive session. All right, so with that, let me go ahead then and close this session. Knock, knock, closed. And I will see you all in about in 11 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.